Cheers. ELKSHAPE podcast, MFJJ at my house. How you doing?
I'm fantastic. How you doing, Dan?
You look good. How old are you now?
44.
Your birthday was in May?
Yep, just last month. Getting old, man.
It's weird how, like, I don't know. I'm 42 in August. Mm-hmm. And I would say that as soon as I turned 30, I'd gotten married, we started having kids. It's been a blur.
Yeah.
But I remember my 20s, like, it was just, man, I'm not old. I'm never going to get old.
Yeah.
And I'm sure someone who's 50 or 60 listening right now is like, just you wait.
You whiny little bitches.
Yeah. But no, it seems like this spring, it's gone. And I feel like it just got here.
Yeah.
And I'm not even looking forward to summer. I would prefer another good month of low 70s, high 60s with some rainstorms.
The last couple of days we've actually had that.
It's been amazing.
Fingers crossed, keep it going.
Well, this high 80s at the beginning of May, man, we went from, do you remember how nice October was here?
Oh, God, yeah.
And then November 1, we got snow.
Yep, which is great. Like to have snow in late season.
For hunting.
But
then it was just winter until it wasn't, and then we kind of skipped spring again. So I don't like these. I like the 4 seasons. That's why we're here.
Yeah, and it sure doesn't seem like we get 4 anymore. It does definitely seem like we have a very short spring, if it even exists at all, and a stupid long winter anymore. Or sometimes we get like good cold weather, and then it warms up for like a month, and then it gets cold again, which is kind of weird. So it like dissolves a good portion of the fall. Our winters seem to be getting a lot longer, or at least it feels that way. Maybe I'm wrong.
I agree. And neither one of us, I ski a little for the kids.
Yeah.
I don't own a snowmobile. Winters are rough. We make a lot of content with you in the winter.
Yeah, we got a lot of downtime, and we're standing around a shop and going, what can we talk about? But I do have tracks for one of my UTVs, and that's been fun.
Oh.
Yeah, that's been a good time.
But I love that you have multiple UTVs.
Beat the crap. Well,
let's talk about your playground for a second. And I wish I had visuals to support this, but like when you go to Spokane Valley Archery, and I'm going to call it post D-Day.
Sure.
Okay.
Why not? Well, it's when life started over for the better.
There is like a legit fishing boat, like made for like bow fishing.
Yeah.
With the lights.
Yeah.
And on a trailer.
Yeah.
There's a giant flatbed with all this cool stuff for your property development up north, like water tanks and some 3D targets. This is all off memory just the other day.
Yep. That's still
There's several e-bike entertainment options, whether it's an actual e-bike or e-motorcycle, several. There is a dirt bike in the back that's a WR450 that looks like a pretty good one.
Yeah, you want to buy it?
If it had electric start. And then
that's why I don't want it.
There's a golf cart, there's the 4-wheelers, there's UTVs, there's a really big camper, fifth wheel.
Yeah.
What did I miss?
I think you covered all of it. There's a 4-wheeler.
Yeah.
There's a 4-wheeler. There's an enclosed cargo trailer. There's a short 4-wheeler trailer. I need to sell that. There's a heavy duty short trailer that I use for hauling like feed or whatnot, it's about the size of a 4-wheeler, but it's got 1-ton axles and you can really pull some weight on it, put a metal deck on it. Yeah, I got a lot of toys. I like my toys. That's definitely a hobby. And then you go up the house, there's a slingshot, those are fun. My Ram is still there. I need to sell it. I got to get that sold. But
you haven't sold your Ram yet?
No, I actually I have a dump trailer too and an excavator.
So the dump trailer is like the best purchase. I am in the market. My dad brought one over and I'm like, dude, Dad, it was so nice. I'm like, what are we talking? And he's like, $10K. And I was like, oh. But I'm in the market.
They work. They're so nice. I've just got to move a bunch of dirt around. So
your Ram is a 2500?
It's 2500. It's a 13. It's a mega cab long bed with fifth wheel setup and camper package setup. It's got the strap downs, all that stuff, or anything you want to do with it. But it was a conversion, so it's 2 frames welded together to make a long bed mega cab because you can't buy one of those. So it's got an 8-foot bed and a mega cab. Motor's been rebuilt. Transmission's been rebuilt. It's got a new turbo in it. It's tuned, and the tuning's now perfect. Everything about it's good, and it's 10 years old now, so it's time to move on to something else.
What's the mileage?
It only has like 110,000 original miles. My motor had to get rebuilt because there's a grid plate heater in them, and there's a bolt on one side, and somehow the solenoid got stuck open and it melted the bolt and it went down to the motor.
Melted the bolt?
Melted the bolt head off, and that bolt head went down into a cylinder. So we tore it apart, rebuilt it, put a small cam in it.
I imagine a truck got towed when that happened.
It was still running.
Wow.
Yeah, it was still running. It was making. I had that trailer that you talked about. It's got all the stuff for my property on it. I had that hooked on and was driving it to the property. When I made it to Sullivan and Sprague, the Harbor Freight right there, and like the last quarter mile before I got to there, I heard tack 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 tack. So I pulled over, parked it, called my mechanic, had him listen to it. He's like, "Yeah, you need to go back and park it and disconnect it and bring it down to my shop. Like you're not." And I was able to drive it there, but yeah, there was and for a little while, it stopped making the noise, and then it would start again. Well, it was the piece of metal bouncing around in the cylinder, and there's places where it would make noise and places where it wouldn't. So I had to redo that. The transmissions and those things are garbage. So I was like, well, if I'm going to rebuild the motor, I'm going to replace the transmission and bulletproof.
Could you grab an Allison and bring it into the...
Possibly, but I had a shop in town that's really good with transmissions. Just make it bulletproof.
Jake's transmission shit the bed on his Ram. Mm-hmm. And my favorite truck I've ever owned still to this day is a 13 Ram, 2500. Mm-hmm. Wasn't a long bed because like you just said, they don't exist. But dude, you need a long bed and a Crew Max. Couldn't keep that truck out of the mechanics. And I do a lot of wrenching, but I'm sorry, man. The third front end in less than a year.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And then the 2 water pumps went out, and that was under warranty. Like that was a recall. Yeah. And what else? I had a couple leaky pinions, and I will say though, we had a 33-foot camper trailer, and when that thing was behind the truck, I didn't even know it was there. Yeah. Like, that is truly the most raw torque I've ever had. And I had it tuned and all that, and it was lifted. It looked good, but I sold it because I was tired of, like, breaking down.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue with those, which I don't typically take that truck in the mountains, is the front end's so heavy that all your suspension gets jacked and your running gear gets jacked. 'Cause it's not really designed to be bouncing around with that much weight in the front of the motor. But, yeah, I pulled a 14,000-pound fifth wheel with mine, and the only time you knew it was back there was when you started moving.
That's it.
Because it took a little bit to get you moving, but once you were moving, it was like you put your foot down and it just take off.
And now you have do you have a Chevy? You have a GMC?
I have a 2022 long bed crew cab Chevy.
It's a Chevy.
It's a Chevy. What do they call it? A High Country? Yeah, the High Country package. They had some rich dude in Montana that owned a construction company had bought it while he was waiting for his Ford. So he had it for 6 months, put a 6-inch lift on it, 35-inch on 22s, the in-control airbags, motorized steps, all the stuff you'd want to add to it, right? Full leather, loaded, all that.
So much thousands that you don't have to spend.
I had the receipts for it. It was $11,000 that he'd put into that truck that he bought for $87,000.
Yep.
And they sold it to me for $82,000.
I bought a Tundra
with 5,000 miles on it,
brand new off the lot in 15.
It's funny, I bought one a little before that, but
I wrote a check because it was a business. I was buying it for my business, and I kind of felt like a baller.
Right.
That thing was like 45 out the door only 8 years ago.
Yeah.
What's a brand new Tundras are now like $70K.
Yeah, which is so dumb.
What happened to the truck prices?
I think it's the American dollar versus the Japanese money more than anything, but there were shortages and lots of them. Yeah, it's still red. There were shortages and lots of them, and when that happened, the used market went up, and then coincidingly, the new market went up again to try to offset the price of a used vehicle because people were paying new price for used vehicles.
Yeah,
it's like, well, if they're willing to pay a new price for a used vehicle, we should probably raise the price of a new vehicle, and here we are. Now, granted, they're putting more electronics and more features and more crap in a truck, but it's not double.
And yeah, I don't know.
But our money's worth about 20%.
So I'll be holding on to the vehicles that I have right now,
which is probably smart.
But it hurts because I really wanted to. I don't know. I wanted to get an Incognito vehicle for hunting because I have a YouTube channel like you, and people have seen all my vehicles and on Instagram, and I mean I understand, but like literally, I'm gonna give you an example. Yes. 2 days ago, I made a story after I hung out with you. I went and scouted, and it was about a 2-hour drive.
Right.
And it was a spot I had found many years ago, and it's public. And honestly, when it comes to deer hunting, and I'll say this publicly, I'd rather hunt privately.
Sure.
I'd rather hunt private property.
Well, yeah, you don't have the concern of somebody finding your spot and ruining.
I can't control other hunters.
You can't control other people,
and that's the main thing. So I'm like, yeah, this spot looks good, and I bet you there's elk, and it's Washington, so I was like, there might be an elk herd in there. Mm-hmm. I went and scouted the shit out of it after I left and pulled all the ticks off my body from your archery range, and then I scouted the shit out of it, dude. I put out a cell cam, a regular cam. I found a couple sheds, and I found I found some other guys' stands in there, and of course they were like where
right by the road.
Yeah, where you would think. And anyways, long story longer is I made a little story, and then I kind of did a little screenshot of it on OnX, but I blurred out majority of it.
Yeah.
4 people messaged me and said, "You're right here, aren't you?" And I was like, I quit. I literally I work with OnX. I was trying to do a thing for OnX.
Sure.
And because I use the shit out of OnX.
Yeah, it's a very valuable tool.
I'm just gonna I'm only going to make stuff in post on a computer where I can do like a massive Gaussian blur on the backdrop because so guys, people are really smart and I always need to be reminded of that. So back to my truck, I need an Incognito truck.
I'm telling you, like mid 2000s crew cab Tacoma.
Yeah.
Go anywhere, do anything with it. You can lock your stuff inside the car without any kind of issue, as much gear as you need. And there's a ton of them floating around. So, but yeah, and then never, ever, 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 ever have it on video anywhere.
Never.
Ever. So they just don't know. Keep it over at your buddy's house.
I was thinking like buying a Subaru, like Forester or something, and putting a lot of like tree hugger stickers.
I didn't know you transitioned.
I don't even want to talk.
I had to. You just walked into that. How do you not? How do you not?
I was gonna like let that one slide, but that was good.
Oatmeal and yoga pads and
all that.
Stuff.
I was gonna have a yoga mat in the back if you looked in, and a couple stickers.
My buddy Dave put out signs when he was camping in one spot one year that was hunting that was about gay pride and something else, like a couple like positive. So like nobody'd come around because I thought it was a bunch of gay dudes. Oh, it's a great idea. Oh, genius!
I think that is pretty sharp.
That's pretty freaking smart, man.
I think we're already in like tricky waters right now.
Well, back in the day, Evans had a bunch of wall tents, and when he was hunting public land in Idaho, he'd go up to the entire drainage and make like 8 camps. And make it look like there was 8 different groups of people camping in the drainage, and they were all his.
There's a sales rep that you work with that does
that
the same
too?
thing.
Yeah, you probably heard it from Dan originally. Yeah. I bet. Yeah, and hey, it's legal. Yeah, right? It's clever. It just how badly you want to hunt in one spot.
I've been fooled by it.
Yeah,
I've been the guy that I'm talking about.
Yeah,
fooled me. Yeah. And he told me, and I was like, you can't get mad. You got to tip your hat.
That's a lot of work.
I really thought there was 8 guys back here.
Yeah, and how badly do you want to, have your area stay yours and keep other people out of it? And you got to. I mean, I don't have that kind of time. I don't know how people can dedicate that kind of time to that.
I don't know, but let's talk about a few other little what other advanced tactics can you do for public land? So when you talk to other hunters on public land, I generally try not to have a conversation with anybody. Yeah. I actually wear a face mask most of the time, just because I don't really want to stop and talk or whatever. And what else do I do? I wear a helmet.
Do you wear like that kind of face mask or a camo face mask? Like an N95?
That's actually a really good idea. I'm actually going to carry a mask, N95.
A Karen mask.
A Karen mask or Kevin. And if I see anybody, I'm going to put it on and I'll be like, hey, how's it going? No handshakes, fist bumps only.
Yeah.
And just, that's actually, okay, that was it.
There you go.
I wanted to figure.
There you go.
That's what I'm doing.
Come across as somebody that's in the woods would never want to talk to.
I've met amazing people while hunting, but I will say it is probably a waste of time to sit there and lie to each other because I'm not going to tell you what I really know.
Sure.
And you're not going to tell me what you really know. And that's probably best.
Well, but plus being a public figure, everybody automatically assumes wherever you are must be the best place to hunt. That does not mean that at all.
No.
You're frequently moving around a lot because you think this area is going to be good. Yeah. You go in there and try to figure out it's not. You go somewhere else. Somebody sees you located there and will like hunt there for the next 5 years because this must be the best place.
Yeah,
ever.
you have one particular truck that you cannot take hunting now.
I can to my private property.
Yeah,
because nobody can go there.
It's a sick. What year is that Yoda?
That's a '92 Toyota with a 4-cylinder Cummins in it. Lifted, straight axled. It's
like really lifted.
Yeah, well, you had to clear the motor. Mm-hmm. Like, because once you straight axled the front, the straight axle had to go down. Like,
where is it, by the way?
It's out in front of the house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's got an electrical draw in it somewhere that's like something's not turning off.
Oh.
So if I don't leave it hooked onto a trickle, in 4 days, the batteries will be dead.
That's not good.
Yeah, and I forgot to do it once, and it crushed.
Who did the wrap on that?
The place in between Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah.
They do like most of them in the country, I guess. They have like a massive
They did my
company.
truck.
Yeah, they do a great job.
Which, by the way, I don't want to say, I did pull off majority of the decals on my truck.
Which is probably smart.
Yeah.
I mean, your truck stands out, which is, I've thought about doing that, but at the same time, I don't want to do that. It's just like drawing attention to yourself, which is kind of why I'm hoping that nobody really notices my dad's truck.
Yeah.
That I bought when he passed away from my mom.
Yep.
And I'll probably take that a lot because doesn't stand out as much.
It's totally low key.
Right.
It is.
Gas mileage is terrible. And it stood up to a car accident and I got in really
When we bought the Tundra, I quit worrying about gas prices.
You just have to ignore it.
You just have to take it on the chin.
Yeah.
That thing at 5.7 sucks. All right, Josh is here, guys. Backstory for those that don't know Josh. I met Josh. We figured it out at one point, but somewhere around 03, 04, I bought a bow from him. My first real bow, my big boy bow. My first bow purchase was, I think, an archery or pawn shop.
Yeah.
Was it a pawn shop?
I think it was.
It wasn't really an archery shop, but it was in Deer Park. And I didn't know anything.
No, there was an archery shop in Deer Park, and there was a pawn shop that sold archery stuff in Deer Park. So
okay, and I think it was an archery shop, but
that'd be a Whitetail Plus then.
I went in there. I don't even remember exactly what happened. I just went in there and bought a Martin Cougar.
Yeah.
And then I actually went in there again and bought my dad a bow for Father's Day, a Martin Pantera. And we used, the old Easton
XX75.
Yeah, 75s. And had a Walmart type target, and we had 10 acres, and we just shot on our property with handheld, with indexes, and we put tree stands up on our property, and we hunted elk. We hunted elk really hard. And I remember, there was a couple things that influenced me, but it was magazines that were like the Hoyt marketing really got me. And I was like,
mid-2000s, their marketing.
I really want to buy
good.
a Hoyt. Well, it worked. And I went, I did research, and I figured out there was an archery shop, like a legit one. So I went to yours and I bought one from you. And the rest is history. I was in the hunting industry probably like in 06, really like kind of cemented in, got an article, a column in Bow Hunter. That's not a big deal, by the way, but like it was to me. It was an honor.
Back then, that was a pretty big deal. I didn't hardly know anybody that did.
And so I would come in, and I was a little pretentious in the fact that I would not let any of your slappies touch my stuff from the word go. I was like, I will only deal with Josh. Well, he's with the customer. I will wait until he's done. It could be a while. I was like, I don't care. And that's kind of how our relationship started. I recognized immediately this guy's a freaking wizard, and it went from there. Now, when did I finally get you to come on screen to do YouTube? I know it took years of prying.
I actually went back and tried to look and figure it out. Like, how long have I actually shown up on your channel? It's been more than 7 years, I'm pretty sure. Somewhere in that vicinity when I first started being willing. Maybe 6, 7, something like that.
And how many years did it take of prying?
Oh, like a decade.
Yeah.
I was like, Dan, I don't have time. And the reality of it was I didn't think it would help anybody.
No.
Because I didn't see it. I didn't see how. I only knew my own area, right? And there was a lot of knowledge in my area, and largely because I'd been there for a long time and tried to educate people and taught people in the area. And I'm sure there were some other people as well that contributed to that, but I mean, I was the most consistent, longest tenured thing in the area, so I have to kind of take a little bit of credit for it. But I didn't see how making a YouTube video was going to help anybody. Honestly.
Yeah.
I just didn't. And
I didn't have a compelling argument.
And
really.
I was like, I don't have the time, man. What am I doing? And to be completely honest, I did it to shut you up. Because you wouldn't leave me alone. I was like, Dan, I like you. It's fun. It's a good time. This is a waste of my time. Yeah. So I picked my least needed time in a week.
Yep. I remember.
Wednesday at 8 a.m. Between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. That's what you get.
You gave me an hour, and then somehow I got you to do it again. Like, I got to do it a regular schedule.
Well, when you did your first camp was when I became convinced it was actually valuable.
Yeah.
Before that, because I hadn't had a lot of interaction with people out of the area.
Right.
And everybody on that camp was not from here. There was like one guy from here.
That was the furthest reaching camp we've ever done.
That was a very large eye opener for me at the lack of knowledge and information available to a lot of different people. Now, granted, I'm sure there's probably areas that have a lot of good information, a lot of good knowledge, and maybe they don't show up to something like that. But there is way more that don't than do.
I can attest.
Yeah, my response has been that by far.
I've now visited double-digit archery shops in the country doing the camps. There's something special you got going on at Spokane Valley Archery. I hadn't been there in months, and I went out and shot just the other day. I was like, God dang, this is like a stroke of gratitude hit me. I was like, this is the coolest little archery shop in the world because it's not like in town, but it's not far. And it has this, how many acres 3D course?
The whole facility is on 13 acres. And the archery range is probably on the 3D course is probably on 9 of it or 8 or 9 of it.
And it's so good. It's so good.
It's going to be a lot better.
Well, I'm excited for that. And I'm also excited for that. I get to write you a check for a lot of money to get my first
standing full-size elk target.
Reinhardt. I could buy one cheaper at a tack used, but like it's a hassle. It's a gamble. I was like, thank you for... I don't want to throw you under the bus, but I might have gotten a better price by buying it through you or from you. We'll just leave it at that. But I'm excited to have that.
Yeah.
And with you upgrading the targets, and all the targets are in really good shape right now. I just shot the course. There wasn't any, like even the moose, the iconic moose shot. We need to replace the core soon, but it's still...
Every target on that course has a core coming too.
Cool.
So I'm not getting rid of any of the targets, and I'm doubling up again.
Speaking of
there'll be
core
a lot
replacements,
I
got a giant box. Smooth On is a company that does like repair kits for 3D archery.
Oh, is that the one that you used for that?
Yeah.
I saw that little
I did it
core
wrong.
video you did. We did it wrong.
I made it so dense that I shot my first arrows into it and I couldn't get them out.
I totally forgot I was going to show up with a replacement core for your, because I have a bunch of them at the shop, and I was like, dude, these are cheap. What are you doing?
Okay. So anyways, I talked to the guys. You really got to do it. Like if you do it out when it's really hot, it'll expand way more. If you do it cool in a basement, it'll get very dense. I did the latter.
Cool in the basement.
Anyways, I don't have a bunch of targets to replace, and I have a giant box of that stuff. You should take that from me and use it. It is awesome. And it's visually, like that reel got 130,000 views in a couple days. I almost didn't even put it as a reel. So the visuals of mixing the stuff, instructions.
I watched it. It was really cool.
So I have a big box.
Like I stared at it. I was like, ooh,
take that off my hands. And if you need to replace anything, and do it outside, actually when it's hot.
When it's hot. Yeah, you're supposed to do it in a warm environment from what I understand.
But it's great stuff. And it's
how about I give you a replacement core for the one you jacked up?
I love that.
How's that? Then
I can cut out and get my expensive iron will components out of the middle of it.
Oh, did you lose parts?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, jeez.
I want to talk to Josh about tuning. You guys are all watching and listening because most of you should know Josh. We've basically done stuff together for a long time, and we've been friends forever. And I will say this, Josh has always had my back. He's the kind of guy, I'm not going to make you cry on this one, but I do want to say publicly, thank you. I was telling my wife this. I was like, I bitch about Josh all the time. He drives me nuts, but he's like a stepbrother where like, all that, whatever happens doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, I can look at our history, and you've always given the shirt off your back to me. And the best example is I cut my string, possibly with a broadhead, right before a hunt with a bow that was for proving grounds with Matthews. So it's a bow that you can't really
can't replace it.
Yeah. I called Josh with very short notice, and he's like, I'll stop what I'm doing. I'll hand make you a string, not the cable, but a string for you. And I just remember, I was like, I'm never going to forget this. And I'm not. Like, dude, you stopped everything to help me. And you've always done that. You've always helped me, given me any gear I needed or whatever. And yeah, so I'm happy to see your success. You've killed it in the last 3 years. I would say.
Actually, I think it's only been 2.
2? Okay.
It's been 2.
Talk about that growth, because it is humbling, and I know you don't want to talk about it, but it is inspiring. And maybe look back now, kind of like, wow, here's a couple of clues that led to this. Here's some decisions I made that turned out to be pretty good. And if you're willing, maybe here's a couple decisions I made that were dumb. I mean, you're killing it.
Well, I guess I'd start by, I watched a few YouTube videos before we started doing this. I think the first 3 years, I refused to watch one. If you remember, you need to go watch this one. It was really good. I'm not watching it, Dan.
Yeah.
You need to comment. I'm not reading it. I don't care. I'm not looking at it.
Yep.
This is.
I do remember.
This is not important. I don't care. Yeah, there was what? Could you please just comment back on this one? It's like, no, I told you I'm not looking at it. I'm not doing it. I don't want any involvement in it. If it helps, great. I want nothing to do with it. I hate social media. I wanted so much not to do it. And I think the reality of it coming off as authentic and real as it is because I don't want to do it. I feel like I have to because I don't think a lot of it's not being done right. And that's where my own channel came to be as far as looking at products, because obviously you have products you can talk about and products you can't, and I can talk about whatever I want because I have zero sponsorships and will not take money from anybody, period. They might send me stuff to test or play with or give away. That's fine.
But there's no obligation when you do that.
And I'll forewarn them, you might not like what I have to say.
True.
And we might not be friends after this, and that's fine, but I'm just going to be honest, and that's the reality.
And that builds trust with the audience.
It builds trust. And I've had a couple of people waffle over it, and I'm like, look, understand, I'm never going to say everything's fantastic because that's what's wrong with everything that's out there. Mm-hmm. Every bit of good that you see, every bit of review that you see, at least now maybe they're a little different, but before it was this is the best bow I have ever shot in my entire life. And then a week later, this is the best bow I have ever shot in my entire life. It's like, well, hold on a second. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
That's not true. So it's like, how can I show this and not get in trouble? Because I mean, I sell all these companies, right?
Yeah.
If I start talking shit, they might go, we don't want to sell to you anymore.
Yeah. There's
consequences. There's real world consequences that can't exist. I just hope that my account's large enough that they'll be like, yeah, maybe the next review will be good.
That's a good spot to be.
It is. There's taking my business away is a pretty damning thing for them.
So that was a calculated risk, really.
It was, but I can't do this and not be honest. There's no way I can't. So I went, okay, well, we can measure things. We can test things in the environment they're supposed to be tested in, but we're not going to test things in a manner in which is unusable, right? So we shot at the speeds shot at the weights and measurements that they say they are to get the speeds that they get, but we used an actual functional arrow rest and an actual string loop, which they don't, to ensure that what we're getting is something that you can get at home. Like what I'm testing, you can achieve.
And they call that IBO speed?
Yeah, I think it's called IBO anymore. I'd have to look.
Why
excuse
IBO? My language, why the effery? Why don't they
why the fuckery? Because they think the faster bow is going to sell more than the slower bow. And when you make a bow last year that shot this, and then the bow you come out with next year is slower, their sales go down.
Yeah.
Because one, you can't sell the guy who's chasing speed another bow if the next bow's slower.
True.
And for a long time, speed really drove this industry. I think you're going to see that go away completely. I don't think you're going to see a whole bunch of, we have the fastest bow on the planet, blah, blah, blah. Because, well, one, they can't really achieve much faster than they've already got without really changing how a bow looks or functions.
Does PSE still kind of have who makes arguably out of the main brand manufacturers?
So don't include APA.
I don't even know who that is, so no.
Canadian company.
Okay, Who makes the fastest bow? Straight up.
Probably PSE right now, if you had to actually measure it. But who also makes the hardest pulling bow? PSE. Because speed and difficulty of cycle directly correlate. If you were to graph, which I've had people ask, what do you want me to add to these videos, right?
They want to draw a curve?
They want to draw a curve at every inch. And I'm like, I could do that, but it would probably take 15, 20 minutes. So that adds another 15, 20 minutes to every bow review of my time to make, which, I might do.
Can't you just say, hey, this was really stiff in the beginning?
That is what I say.
This was actually really easy to pull.
That is what I say. This guy's full of shit. That's the best pulling bow I've ever shot, blah, blah, blah. It's like, what'd you compare it to?
How many bows have you pulled back in your life?
Million?
Yeah. So
probably.
Shut up.
Well, yeah, but there's always going to be a Karen out there, and it really doesn't matter what I do or how thoroughly I get. There's still going to be some Karens, but I don't care.
I'm doing a better job of not commenting back to negative ones.
No.
The only kind of negative one I commented back, you saw. And it wasn't negative. It actually hilarious. Made it funny. And you'll see that video coming out. That comment is white. You get to see it.
I don't have an OnlyFans.
Yeah, darn it.
I do not.
So give me your 3 best decisions you made
it would be a
in the last 2 years. Like 3 decisions that maybe looking back are like catapulted you to where, just to give context, your online sales day to day is insane. The amount of inventory you're buying, like your balls are dangling out there, bro. Like you're putting a lot of capital up front and a lot of goodwill. Yeah. Like what are 3 decisions in no particular order that have helped you?
Well, one was just dumb luck. I was already doing the online game, but it was with like closeouts and things like that. You know, I'd gotten to where most major brands were calling me before they actually bothered to try to release a closeout list.
That's true.
And they just call me
because you'd have some weird shit in your upstairs.
Yeah, and none of it was in the store. Like none of it was visually downstairs. Yeah. It was all just, hey, there's this whole thing of they've got X amount of these, X amount of those.
Of like Quest bows or something.
No, it wasn't Quest.
Was it? No. I just remember at one point you're like, I got 300 of these bows, and I'm like, I've never even heard of those. And you're like, yeah, I'm selling them on eBay and online, and they're going out the door.
Yeah.
So you had good. You had a good fundamental like know-how to sell stuff online.
Well, I'd made my business the previous 7 years probably of growing my inventory, but it was mostly in that.
Yeah.
So I still would carry a lot of good products and more inventory in a pro shop than anybody else anywhere near me even had at that time.
Yeah.
Not counting the closeout stuff. And some of the closeout stuff was just really good products that were just really good deals. So we would put a few things downstairs. We're like, hey, this is a really premium thing, and it's 30% lower than it would normally be. So, hey, it's a good deal to a customer. We can pass that on.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff was just like, this is a little fucky. We'll just sell it online and let the world decide if they like it or not and not have it affect our local people. But when COVID happened, shops didn't have inventory. And I was Lancaster probably had more than me. Simmons might have had more than me. There might have been 3-4 places in the country, maybe 5, that had more inventory in their possession than me. And if anybody remembers back to then, if they were in archery or not, it was really hard to get product.
Impossible.
And I had really large accounts with all these people.
Yep.
Like I had high credit, high volume, right? And they're used to me buying a lot of stuff. So your average guy, if like, let's say he's dealing with a rest company, he's buying $10,000 in rests a year. He can't pick up the phone and say, I'll take 50,000. They won't sell them to him. It's like, well, your credit line is 10. So unless you pay for this up front, we're not selling it to you. Right. Well, I had really deep lines. So I could go in and let me back up. Number one good decision was just dumb luck. I happened to have a lot of product when COVID happened and everybody ran out of product. And I subsequently sold almost every single thing I had from that time that year, which I frequently would have stuff that I knew was going to take me a couple of years to move through.
Yeah.
Right. So that was great. That was good. And then once we got through the first couple of weeks, 3-4 weeks, and then we realized what was going on, that there was going to be some restrictions. People were going to have to be socially distant, that kind of thing, realizing that. And I'm like, well, you can't buy a gun hardly at all because every gun got sold. And I had distributors that sell guns, and I go and look at what their inventory is, and it was gone. Like, there was no ammo, there's no guns, there's no nothing.
Yep.
So if you want to shoot something, you were going to be restricted to a bow and arrow if you hadn't already bought what you wanted.
Right.
And if you had a gun, you probably weren't shooting it for fun because you couldn't get ammo.
None.
Right?
None.
So I looked at that and went, this is going to go for a long time as far as a demand in this sport. So I started dealing with every manufacturer that I would deal with on a regular basis, and I'd call them on Monday, say, what's your lead time? And then I would increase my order more than whatever their lead time was. And I did that. So this was decision number 2 that was big. I didn't hide into the fear of this whole thing is going to come crashing down and fall apart, and I just need to survive my business and not be stuck with a lot of inventory. So as the world changed and the demand went up, I already had orders in the system, and most people didn't.
Yeah. So
that put me so far ahead of everybody else, because if you give a manufacturer programmed orders, they automatically go into their book and they have to fulfill them. So I at one point had orders out 18 months with certain people. Like if their lead time was bad, I was going to give you 18 months worth of orders. So you were going to ship me product.
i.e. landslides. Yeah. Perfect example.
Yeah, I still have a ton of them, and you still can't hardly find one somewhere.
No.
I get them regularly, constantly. They're not as bad anymore. They're only like 2 months.
Okay.
But they were 14 months or 15 months at one point. I actually, they do business in a really weird way where they wouldn't send you a partial order. So if you ordered 10 things, they wouldn't send it until they had all 10 things. So I called my rep and went, okay, you are going to hate me, but here's what I want you to do. This is the product that I want, and gave them a list. And I want it every 2 weeks, and I want each one of these things on its own order.
Yep. I'll play the game.
I gave them $1 million worth of orders, and I think I crashed their system when he tried to enter them.
Yep.
Because there were so many different orders for me in there.
Yep.
And so they finally started going, okay, we'll send you partials. And I'm like, look, either you send me partials or I'm going to give you individual orders for the items, because I don't care if you have one thing or 9 things. I want the one thing.
And the rep has this type those up. That's how he makes it.
That's why I was like, you're going to hate me, dude. And he's like, dude, I get it. I want you to get product because I get paid if you get product. So if you don't get product, I don't get paid either. So I'll do it.
That's a stroke of genius, man.
Well,
that's cool.
You got to, I had several manufacturers that how they did business and what they did with your orders. I had to change how I order things to fight how they were doing it, to ensure that, hey, my order came up, you need to send me product. You can't just back burner it because it's 20 times larger than the next guy's or 40 times larger than the next guy's.
Not cool.
No, I mean, we're still trying to operate business, and my credit says I can have it. I pay my bills on time. Yep. I'm a large account with you. You need to send me product, like, period. And there was a couple companies that still wouldn't do it. Like, they're like, well, we don't want so-and-so to, struggle and whatnot. I'm like, well, but I'm struggling. I have commitments. I have obligations. It's not like I'm living in a mansion here. I'm not making a crap ton of money, and I have employees and buildings and things that you need to get paid for. So you can think you're benefiting this small little guy right here, but you're hurting me. Yeah. And I know you probably feel like I can take it, but either you play fair or you don't, and let me know what the rules are, and I will adjust to whatever your rules are. I don't care what they are, but you better abide by what they are. And one particular company did me dirty 3 times. They gave me the rules. I put my orders in by the rules, and then they didn't ship my order. 3 different times. I was mad. I was hot mad. Like,
it's your livelihood,
I based this off of what you told me to do.
Right.
And then you changed what you're doing. And you only changed it for me. And it doesn't help that I was trying to order like 3/4 of what they can make. But it's like, you can't just do that. Like, either you got to tell me how it is. And so I stopped going through them and actually went through another channel to ensure that they couldn't dick with it. But it's just the struggles that you face, when you
kind of a moving target, really.
I have pivoted so many times in my life. It's stupid. Like, I was the anti-online and I was the anti-low margin product guy. Like, if it didn't reach a certain margin, I wouldn't carry it. Like, period. I didn't care if everybody walked in asking for it. The margin on it's garbage, so I'm not going to put it on my wall. I will order it if you want it, but I will not stock it. And I've gone from that to, I don't care what the margin is. I'll carry everything.
That's good. Yeah, so you said luck/timing.
Luck/timing. You said second one was being more clever than everybody else.
Good purchasing practices.
Good purchasing practices, sure.
Which I've already told you that before. I think you're really good at buying. That you have to be. Lastly, third one.
Oh, God.
Early to bed, early to rise, work all day, advertise. Marketing. Your marketing stepped up quite a bit as well.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Well, and I've always had the work ethic too, but it's been like kicked up in here. I think I've probably averaged 70 to 80 hours a week since beginning COVID stuff. Yeah. And I just haven't stopped because it's just been continually going. But yeah, one of the greatest things I probably did was start my channel. Yeah. It did. I couldn't believe how much that directly related back to my website sales, but it's a large portion of it. And it is very smart to do. Yeah. It really, especially if you can get some traction. If you can get some traction to where the algorithm shows your stuff more, you're getting your exposure out to more people. I don't know if a local guy will benefit as much, but I think YouTube even pays attention to the local people around the local person, because everybody sees my stuff.
You're one banger away from blowing up your channel. One banger video. Yeah. Like you have the right thumbnail, you have the right title, something about it, the way it flows. No, Tim busted your balls to do that channel for a long time. He did. He's pretty convincing too. So, but you're also pretty hard-headed. So it took a while, but it did work out well.
It was another one of those things. I don't have so much time. How is this going to be valuable?
Well, look what you had to do. You had to buy stuff, camera gears, lights.
Oh, yeah.
Hire videographers, editors, teach yourself, and then make time for it, and then make studios. And like, if you look back, I bet in the last 2 years, I bet you've spent, I don't know how many thousands of dollars
20.
on stuff. Yeah.
20 pretty easily.
It's a good investment. Honestly, there is an ROI.
It is. It is. No, it was very wise and very smart. And now anymore, if I'm like in the last 6 months, somebody says, you need that. Okay. Send me a link. I'll buy it. You showed up with mics that weren't connected by wire, or that you had separate memory cards and actually recorded it right back to the camera.
Boom.
I bought them the next day.
Exactly.
$300. I don't care how much they are. That saves time.
I do the same thing with my camera guys. The other day, Tyler was like, dude, you need UV filters for all these lenses. I was like, boop, beep, boop, boop. Okay, I'll be here in 2 days. Like, there's certain things you just can't mess around. I wanted to ask you, because I've never asked this question before, and it's, maybe you know about it, maybe you don't. So the Pitman-Robertson Act.
20 years and you've never asked me this question.
This Pitman-Robertson Act. Mm-hmm. How does that work for you? That, because you sell stuff that gets that tax, like when
11%.
It's a lot. Like, does your mom does the books?
The manufacturer pays it.
Okay, so how does that work?
So whenever somebody,
I thought you were paying it.
No, I do not have to pay it. The manufacturer has to pay it. And so here's the, how do I say this? Here's the really fucky part.
Okay.
It's on stuff made in the States, but not made in the States. It's not.
Yeah.
Which is why so much of this stuff gets imported, is because it saves 11% to have it made somewhere else and have it transferred here. At least that's the way it used to be. I don't know if they changed that. But regardless, anybody who manufactures an archery product pays an 11% excise tax to the government because they made an archery product. That goes into a fund to fund public facilities and ranges, right? So there's if you ever go to an archery range that just looks stellar and it's free or something like that, that's where that money came from.
Gotcha.
Right. Its intent or its purpose is to grow archeries, places to do archery. I want to say it's in Grangeville or somewhere around there. There's a really nice facility down there, and it's all money from that. Mm-hmm. Like, nobody built it. Somebody got grant money for it. But that's where those dollars go, and there's a ton of it. Like, if you want to try to start an archery range or something, research that, because there is free money for that purpose, and that's where that free money comes from. It comes from 11% excise tax.
Manufacturer's paying
it. Manufacturer pays it. I don't pay it.
I always thought you're the tax collector. I thought, but okay.
Sales tax.
Yeah, obviously, but I thought maybe you're collecting for the federal as well. All right, that answers that. Okay, I wanted to do this thing, guys, where we asked Josh to dumb it down. Now, we might get in the weeds, but I promise to police this towards after we check this box of, I got a new bow. Mm-hmm. I want to get it tuned. Mm-hmm. Can you dumb it down step by step of what you need to do?
Are we talking build or just the tune process?
Well, let's start with the tune process. Let's assume there's a rest installed semi-correctly to manufacturer spec. Let's assume there's some decent strings on there.
Are we assuming the bow's wheeling tuned already and timed?
I don't think you can assume that.
Okay. All right. So let's say the bow's built. It's got like good quality strings on it, because if you don't put good quality strings on it, you're just going to redo this over and over and over. So it's kind of a waste of time.
And that is like the most important thing. I do not want you to skip over that, guys. I have literally witnessed this. Like, one thing Nick Fisher did teach me, I'd never measured to the thousands of serving on your string.
Yeah, serving diameter.
And he showed me a certain manufacturer that I had on my bow, and it was like, don't smile. You know what I'm talking about. It was like 119, and he was telling me his sweet spot for him was like 108, 109, and Dan Evans is 109, and I'm like, I got to reserve this string. Mm-hmm. So anyways, like, yeah, super important. And now remember, there was a few years there, I'm not going to say what bow it was, but people will be able to figure it out. But that was out of tune after every month. I'd bring it in and be like, Josh, my bow's out of tune. Mm-hmm. Strings matter. Strings are probably the most important thing you can put on your bow, which is why I emphasize it so much. And you rock gas. Gas has been really good to us. They fulfill orders really fast, really well. You won an award. We actually stopped. We were a top 10 dealer or something like that the first year, and we didn't start till April. Sick, man. We're number one dealer in the country right now for gas. Boom. That's cool. They make good product. That's not to say they're the only one that does. There's some really good stuff out there. Yeah. It's more the materials they're using, and if it gets a good stretch on it before it gets served, which is what I always used to do when I built them. I'd put them in a jig and leave them in there under stress for a long period of time, which you can do on a small scale, but it's kind of hard to do on a large scale. But most of them know which fiber materials give and which ones don't. And most of them are paying attention to that when they build it. So if you build it with the right material,
you got a really good likelihood of it not stretching. Because if it stretches and it's noticeable right away, they're going to get a phone call.
Yeah.
And they got to rebuild a set of strings and send the guy a new set of strings, right? That costs them money. So it's to their detriment. It's beneficial to make a product that doesn't stretch because it's most notable and anybody's aware of it anymore. But regardless, like I said, there's a lot of good companies out there. Put good strings on your bow. Don't I'd rather spend that $150 or whatever you're paying for them on that than a nicer sight or a nicer rest, because the cheaper rest probably isn't going to move. The cheaper sight's probably not going to move. I guarantee you cheaper strings are going to move.
Fact.
You can't have crap move and have it keep functioning. So assume we have good strings on there. You set your ideally, I don't think this is super critical, but people will get geeky about it. Measure your axle to axle and your brace height and shorten or lengthen the strings and cables till those match. Right.
Match the specs.
Match the specs of the manufacturer.
Gotcha.
One, it's always good to be able to go back and check it.
Yeah.
Because if they're both stretching equally, your timing will still look right, but it's actually getting longer and it is changing some things. So that's a good starting point. And then once you get the axle to axle and brace height measurement correct, then you want to check timing and orientate, shorten or lengthen, which you should always shorten, not lengthen, because these things are going to get longer. They're not going to get shorter.
Yeah.
So if you end up a titch shorter, you're better off because it is going to give a little bit at some point. It just hopefully gives equally. Mm-hmm. So set your timing at that point, right? And then check your wheel lean. If you, depending on what bow you have, you may not check your wheel lean until you try to tune the bow. If you skip that step, have your arrow rest 13/16 and have your right spine arrow and shoot it through paper and you get a hole, your wheel lean's probably good.
So when we pick the arrow, the main thing to pick, regardless of all the options out there, is to get a properly spined arrow.
Oh, 100%.
And not underspined.
Underspine's the dangerous thing.
Okay.
Overspined is kind of safe. Like if you're on the verge or the edge, according to a chart of what you should use, probably go stiffer.
Okay.
Just to be safe.
Yeah.
And then if you look at that stiffer arrow and go, oh, that's too heavy, then maybe look at a different brand or a different product and get the GPI that you're looking for at an appropriate spine. But almost everybody in general nationally is probably shooting too weak of an arrow. If you have a stiff enough arrow, it'll always perform. A weak arrow will not. Now, ideally, you want the optimum spine because you're getting the most efficiency for velocity for energy. If you overspine an arrow and it weighs more, you're losing velocity. You're getting a titch of energy, but you're losing velocity, and your energy is based off of spine. It's not really based off of physical weight. It's based off of the appropriate flex or energy transfer based off of stiffness. Taking into account how much front weight you have, how much vane weight you have, those all matter. But getting the right spine arrow is super important. If you're on the edge, don't go weaker, go stiffer. It's always going to work better. You'll never find somebody who went a little stiffer and goes, this just doesn't work as good. That doesn't happen.
I've heard maybe a little bit of like right-hand shooters having a too stiff an arrow go slightly left a little bit or something.
But
how hard is it
if it's like way too stiff?
How hard is it to not make it stiff though? You can manipulate things. Right?
Add a little tip weight.
Yeah, there you go.
It's harder to make a weak arrow stiffer.
100%.
Like really hard. It's way easier to make a stiff arrow weaker.
100%. Now you got all this stuff. Maybe you haven't checked wheeling yet, but you definitely have in time. You have a rest set up proper. Mm-hmm. You have your center shot, which is basically a 90-degree angle, right? Where the arrow is coming out true.
Most bows.
Ish.
Most bows. If you have equal and opposite eccentrics, so the wheel above and the wheel below and the cable track above and the cable track below are exactly the same, then yes, it will be level. If they're not the same, it might not be level. You might, because when you draw that back, the knock end based off of the orientation may change. And where it is back here is what matters. Just like wheel lean, when you draw the bow back, where the wheels are pointed at each other at draw is what matters on how it's going to tune, not at rest.
Right.
But everybody's checking those at rest. That's kind of important. But so you can skip the wheel lean step and run it through paper and see if you get a good hole to start. If you don't get a good hole, don't move your arrow rest. You need to start manipulating your wheel lean based off of the hole you get. If you get a point right tear, you need to move your cams to the right if you're a right-handed person. If you get a point left tear, you need to move them towards the left. So whichever way your point is the way you move the cams to try to manipulate that out. And I will have minimum 4-part video series on walking you through how much you move it and how much it changes a tear for this type of bow, that type of bow, for wheeling, and how much shim is. And I'm doing a series of shimming and which shims change how much. So if you've got a laser alignment, if you're using a spot hog laser tool and you're pointing at your cam and you see it moving this far over, how much of a change is it going to take to hopefully get you pointed at the cam? So you don't have to sit there and do it like 3 times. I figured if I just went through and did a video with all of them and you could see how much it moved each one, it would help you narrow down how much you need to change it. So
I'd like to
maybe
watch
you're not
that.
intimidated. Do the same thing with Hoyt. Do the same thing with PSE. Just did the one with Bowtech, but Bowtech's cheating because it's easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, those will all come out in the next.
The nice thing about
2.
wheeling or cam orientation or whatever you guys want to call it, from my experience, is like it's kind of a one and done type thing.
Yeah.
You know, like I've never had you have to redo wheeling.
As long as you don't have fixed string yokes, you won't have to redo it.
Right.
And if you do have to redo it, you might want to take a look at your bearings.
Oh, yeah.
Because the only way that moved is if your bearing shifted. Like the balls that's inside there, that's everything's rotating on. If one of those pops and the balls shift, then the cam can rotate. But if you don't have a movable cable guard and that hasn't changed out, there's no way your left to right changed.
Okay.
Unless you went from not torquing the bow to torquing the piss out of the bow. That's possible. So yeah, you adjust your wheeling for tune, get a good hole. And I don't mean a kind of good hole, like a perfect hole. If you get a perfect hole and you have the right spine arrow, your shaft or broadhead are going to strike the arrow pretty damn close to it.
Okay.
And then from there, if you're a target shooter and you're shooting a target setup and you're ever going to put a fixed blade broadhead on the bow, shoot a shaft. Make sure you've got your shaft weight identical and the weight on the back of the arrow where the fletchings are, just like you did with Nick. That's exactly what you should do if you are a target shooter. If you are a fixed blade bow hunter and you are going to practice with your broadheads, as you all should, to ensure that they all shoot the same, that is important. I don't recommend shaft tuning in that scenario because the broadhead and the shaft on a fixed blade broadhead are going to do the same thing. So it's a redundant step. Mm-hmm. It's an extra step that you're going to do the exact same thing with. And when you shoot a shaft, let's say it's crazy bad, you're going to break that arrow. Whereas with fixed blade, or miss the whole target.
Honestly.
But your fixed blade's still going to do the same thing, but something about having fletching on the back of it won't allow the arrow to keep going. It'll like pull it back a little bit so you don't snap your arrow.
Okay.
So that's part of why I say just go to the broadhead, because at least you won't break your arrow.
From a fundamental standpoint of shooting, what's your thoughts on, I'm just throwing this at you. Mm-hmm. What if you got this, everything like you just said, and you had 6 bare shafts with some electrical tape or whatever on the back to match your fletch, so the total weight's the same. And
why would you have 6?
Let's just say you have a half a dozen.
Okay.
You fletch 6, you didn't fletch 6. You take those 6 that are on fletch, and you kind of stand there in your garage a few meters away from the target, and you shoot through paper, and all you're trying to do is check your continuity, your consistency of your arrows. And then once maybe you establish like twisting the nock a few times and you get those to be all pretty congruent, then you know that you can do that repeatedly to see if you're actually like...
So you're referring to nock tuning.
A nock tune / audit on your technique also.
Oh, okay.
Because I think all this bear shaft talk, which I've never done a lot of it, I kind of like it, but I don't love it. You know what I mean? I know how to skip to the end. Ask my wife. I can skip foreplay. It's cool, but like I do think there's something said, like especially in the off season, about like shooting close to paper.
Foreplay is really important.
I'm a married man of 14 years. I know this. Obviously,
time for an audit.
Yeah. For the target guys, so for anyone trying to get better at their game, like I don't know, man. I kind of like the idea of maybe they have, if you can afford 6 bare shafts to just leave as is, and they are nock tuned. Okay, you're in a slump shooting. Go shoot through paper with a bare shaft, maybe, and your bow's still tuned. It's you.
Okay, so from an audit standpoint,
standpoint.
Okay, from an audit standpoint, you can take that same thing with your fletched arrows, and it will still show a difference. So you don't really need that. It 100% will.
That's true.
If you're doing it different,
I watched you do that at my camp in California.
Right.
It was bad.
Yeah. So it'll still do it, and it will do it. You'll still get a variance in each.
Let me explain that. So like there was a dude, and I'm not gonna say his name. I can't remember it, but he literally shot like 3 shots. It was point left, point right, high tear, and then Josh was like, "Give me that bow." And then you shoot it. And I'm like, "This thing's so not tuned." And then you shoot it. It's got a perfect bullet hole. I was like, "Okay, bro, you literally did 3 completely different shots."
Well, his draw length was way too long too, and that's part of it. When your draw length's long, it's really hard to do it the same.
Yeah,
that's why draw length is so important.
Yeah.
If anything, I'd rather it be a tit short because you are shooting angles and things like that, and you lose it. So that's why it's so important.
Yeah. So I guess we should probably come back to you get a good bullet hole, like a really good bullet hole,
really good, clean, true, clean bullet
Target
hole.
guys probably need to torque tune and bear shaft tune, or just go to bear shaft.
Well, yeah, you probably want to torque tune because it's going to change what your tear does.
Yeah.
Like at that point, if you get a decent paper tear, like looks really good, looks really clean, and you're going to torque tune, then do that. And then go back and check your paper tear.
Maybe explain torque tune for those that are new to it.
Torque tune is the process of, depending on whether you're using the sight or the rest or both, you move the arrow rest out and slowly move it back in until you deliberately torque the bow left. You shoot one straight, normal. You torque it left, you torque it right, and you keep moving the arrow rest in or out until those hit as close to each other as possible.
That's it.
On most modern hunting bows, that's going to be as far forward as you can move your arrow rest, which is where I just typically put them to begin with on a hunting bow. And then your sight, if you have a dovetail on it, you do the same thing. You move it out and slowly move it back in, torquing each time. Move it a click at a time because it's got little indents in it until you can hit as close to the middle as possible. And it does make a difference.
Yeah.
But once again, as you learned when you did it, you moved your sight all the way in, you moved your rest all the way in on a hunting bow.
Yep.
Right? Target bow's different. That's definitely
and
worthwhile.
And then I
and a lot
actually
of
had
them do
never purposely torqued before, and Nick was like, "No, more." And I'm like,
"Yeah, this string is going to jump off the cam," and that's the scary part of doing it too.
So
and
be
why?
Careful.
Well, that's why it needs to be a certain level of person. Can you even do it the same?
But I was blown away at how close those arrows hit when we got it torque tuned.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, that makes sense for a hunting scenario when you're shooting some weird off position and you feel that anxiety to get rid of the arrow.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that would help bring in some forgiveness.
So it might give a better reason to somebody who might disagree with the fact that I said move your rest and as tight as you can, your sight as tight as you can, because it generally creates the least amount of torque and variance. Yeah. It would prove it to you that it's probably going to work. So
do it. Knock yourself out. Yeah. What about the guys that maybe aren't target? Like, what's their next step after a perfect bullet hole? Do they start addressing, like, we're assuming that the second axis has been touched?
Oh, as far as leveling your
levels,
sight?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's, depending on the type of sight you have, should we just assume that it's a movable slider rail?
I think most people do that now.
So, yeah, pretty much. I think it's way more common than not.
Right.
So you put your bow in a jig, get your string square and level.
Yes.
Right, depending on what tools you use to do that. I make stuff for it. There's a lot of stuff out there for it, but get a level on your string and get the bow string square and level.
Yep.
And then put a level on the rail of your movable sight and move that rail till it's level. And then check the bubble scope in your head of your sight and move that to where it's level. And then the only other thing is third axis. On third axis, ideally you draw the bow back, hold it downhill at an angle, have a flat level on your riser in a flat spot, and then match whatever the bubble on the riser is doing to the one in the scope head, which is when you see us draw it back in the draw board and hold it at an angle like we did the other day. That's what we're mimicking.
Yep.
And we also just showed that hand torque will also change that. So ideally you have a sight that you can make finite adjustments to in that and functionally shoot it in. So go to an uphill target on a dot and change your bubble based off of whether it hits left and right until you're hitting the middle of the target for uphills and downhills. It's really solid. It's a really good way to do it. Once again, this is dictated by this person's ability.
I still want to give Black Gold. I'm not using their site. I've used it a lot. I still want to give them a shout out.
Best system for it.
Best system for third axis. Like when I was using, and I love Dan. Dan Evans probably listened to this. Hey, Dan. Yeah, man, I don't like having to loosen 2 screws and tighten 2 other screws and then shoot and hope that I made good shots. And then, I went the wrong way. Now I got to tighten the top 2 and loosen the bottom. I mean.
Well, in all fairness, his is easier than a lot of other ones.
It is.
There are some that are just
Spot
horribly
hog,
hard.
figure it out. They got great engineers. Why can't you make anyways? It's another tighten loosen system.
Yeah.
But they do, I will say, Spot Hog does have that metal wire in the middle.
That's nice.
Which really helps if you're in, guys, we're getting in the weeds. I got to police us. Okay, so
it's still red and we're at an hour.
We got a second axis figured out. We're
shooting third axis, ideally.
And third axis. And I will say, every time I've given you my bow and you've done your new hack is what I'm calling it, where you put it in full draw and tilt it down and put the third axis tool and you manually adjust it. It's kind of nice because I'm not involved. The human's not involved. And it's been super close every time. And then you make a little, like, I have never had to adjust any of them that you've done. And then this one recently that we just did, I'm trying to explain this proper, so help me.
It was within the lines, but it wasn't dead center.
But you hadn't touched it.
I hadn't touched it.
And so we hadn't done the third axis with you. And I went out and shot it in myself. And fortunately, at your range, I got a steep downhill and a steep uphill.
Oh, and those targets are right next to each other on purpose.
So it's
convenient. You can walk in a circle and keep shooting it.
So I shot my downhills and I was trending right. I went and shot my uphills I was trending left. I made one tiny adjustment and shot and hit on the lines. And I was like, okay, I'm in. And so I was really curious to see how close it was to what you did. Super close. So that is a good hack that you have.
It is.
And it's a good reason to go to SVA because I don't know anyone else that does that.
Yeah, there's I think I've seen it one other time, but not with that tool because that's a tool I made. But we are working on manufacturing that tool.
I think that would be great.
An integrated draw board that pivots, so you can pull a bow back and check those things.
It'll be so
ideal.
It's a time saver.
That actually goes on to a last chance press because that's what most people have.
That's what we all have, man.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple out there that are.
What's the red one thing that?
That's the red one.
Express or something.
Oh, I haven't made that in like 5 years. 10 years. Dudley. Okay, so hold on. Let me talk about Dudley for a second. Hey, John, you don't listen to my podcast, but I want to play a soundbite, and I want to know if he messaged me because I know he saw. So he saw this story. Yeah.
I tagged him. He didn't comment, and last time he texted me, he was kind of mad at me because I made a little clip with Joel Turner, kind of making fun of the silverback, but it was like literally just
the release for children.
Yes,
Joel likes to say,
but it was just a clip. He actually had great context. It's a great release, and I love John, but I got a text from him. He wasn't happy about that. So I'm gonna play the soundbite.
All right, today on Knock on Archery, we're gonna switch this guy here from the silverback over to the Carter Wise choice. Are you ready, my friend?
Ready.
We've got a really nice total archery challenge shot over here. You ready for this? Through the trees. You got target downrange. Here's your new release.
I'll trade you.
Okay, thank you. Knockonarchery.com. All right, so pull through the shot. You ready? Okay, focus. Pull through. Pull through the shot. Draw your bow. Pull through. Okay. Aim for that back strap over there. Later on, we're going to fire up the Traeger. We're going to call Sharon. You ready? We're doing it, buddy. No tag suit tonight. Squeeze your butt cheeks. That's right. Okay. Executed. You followed through. Knock on, baby.
That's not John Dudley.
No?
Yes. That is a subscriber at Bear Camp with the best John Dudley. That was not.
Oh my God, that was good.
You thought I was Dud.
I did. Yeah.
When he said, shoot through the back straps, fire on the Traeger. We'll call Sharon. Squeeze your butt cheeks. So I tagged Dud in that, and like, dude, I was like, this is the best Dudley impersonation. We got nothing but love for you.
Yeah.
I think he's probably offended, but I thought that was like, you thought that was.
How do you get that much in the public and be offended?
I don't know.
You can't survive if you get offended by stuff.
I don't know if he's sensitive or not, but John, I love you. I thought that was like, so that guy his name's Justin.
Yeah.
He's a huge fan of Dudley's.
Yeah.
Like, he's been studying Dudley. He shoots a PSC. He has everything knock on.
Yeah.
And he started talking like Dudley, and I was like, dude, I got to film this.
This is so good.
But wasn't that was incredible.
That was incredible.
Yeah.
That was incredible.
That's at the YouTube
funny.
video you have to watch, but that's the bear hunt you didn't.
Yeah, I hadn't watched. Well, it came out today.
You didn't go on, and I'm kind of glad you didn't.
Well, my passport didn't make it. I was 4 days late on my passport getting here. So I was like, I could drive up here for 2 days, and by that time it was not good anyway. So I was like, nah, I'm just going to stay. I'm going to stay here and put the nose back to the grindstone and keep busting shit out. You know, I needed to do that. But so we're tuning. We've got the first, second, and third set. Now you sight in your bow to distance. Make sure your distances are all good.
Let's talk about that
and then,
quickly. What's the number? Like, you prefer them to get 20 like perfect and then back out to 60, or
so
ability?
if you're using like sight tapes or whatnot, you know, as far as you can comfortably shoot the bow is going to give you more accurate information. But we're kind of skipping over something here.
Okay.
You get your 20, get everything squared up, and figure out where your 60 yard is. Right? Get 60, and then reset your peep height to where that is the most optimal, comfortable position.
Thank you.
And then go back and refigure out where 20 is, because it ain't on 20 anymore. Because if you're set at 60, 20, you're going to be pushing into it pretty good. 100, you're probably still touching the string barely with your nose.
Yep.
And that's to give you the most accurate overall package.
Yeah, like my peep right now is not the most fun to shoot at 20 and 30.
Mm-hmm.
But gosh dang, anything past 60,
yeah,
it's perfect. So I'm willing to deal with that a little bit, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you got to look at like 20 and 30 as these are easy. Do I really have to do it perfect at those distance?
Right.
Or do I want it to be perfect farther on? So get your peep set at 60, refigure out, which once you move that, it's probably your 60's now probably going to become 50. Mm-hmm. Realistically, you're probably going to lose about 10 yards off of what you were shooting. Get that set good. got all your distances, everything's money. Then for me, I'd immediately shoot a broadhead at 20 yards once I'm resighted and make sure it's hitting where my field point is.
Okay.
And then if it's not, you make your adjustments for your rest for left to right, typically up and down. Like if that thing's done right, your up and down should never be different.
By the way, are we going to redo the broadhead tuning video?
Yeah.
I was thinking about that yesterday, and I was like, I'm going to put it out there. If you live in the Spokane area, I'm tired of being on the video. Okay. And honestly, my shit's really dialed right now.
Yeah.
So if you're a subscriber of either of our channels or a listener of this pod and you live in the Coeur d'Alene, Spokane area, if you want to drive all the way over here, we're looking for somebody. Yeah. I'm looking for some West Siders. Yeah. I'm looking for somebody to bring over their bow, their field points, and their fixed broadheads. And you will leave with them all hitting perfect. And I hope that they're messed up so that we can solve. Because last year we made a video and we got a lot of criticism on it that we said something wrong.
Yeah, I said it backwards.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've said it backwards probably 6 times because my brain's
So we're going to do it proper.
Yeah.
And the guys at archerytalk.com just love to hear that you're wrong. And
yeah.
so you should surf that website sometime.
No, I don't want to.
Anyways, the whoever it is that, reach out. I will pick somebody. You come over. You're going to, and I want to do it not in August. I want to do it in June or July.
Should I just clarify where I was wrong?
Yeah, well, we're going into that step right now, but I'm just saying visually, I want to bring all this to life on the channel. Yeah. So whoever you are, come be featured on our channels, and we will take you through broadhead tuning 101, and we will fix you up. So let's you shoot a broadhead at 20.
Well, first you need to ensure that your broadhead's straight out of the arrow. Like period. It won't shoot.
No wobbles.
Like no wobbles. Like put it on a spinner and make sure it's spinning like a top and doesn't wobble. Or put it in the palm of your hand, V your fingers and blow on the fletching. You'll feel it moving if it's not.
And guys, I used to wonder, like, what's a wobble, what's a knot? It'll be really obvious.
It's pretty noticeable. It's pretty obvious. So then we're talking right-handed shooter here. Say you shoot 20 yards and your broadhead hits to the right of your field point. You move your rest to the right, not to the left. I'm sorry, I said it backwards twice. My bad, internet, whatever. But yeah, if your broadhead hits right, it's the same thing as a shaft tune. If your broadhead hits right, you move your arrow rest slowly to the right, and I mean slowly.
Like a click.
Like a click, like enough that your paper tear probably wouldn't look any different. Like a click or 2 clicks. If you have to move it more than like 4 or 5 clicks, your spine's probably wrong. If you've got a good tear and everything seems to be flying really good, you shouldn't have to move more than 4 or 5 clicks. I would probably start looking at, okay, hold on. Maybe this is too weak of an arrow. And if it's hitting left, maybe it's too stiff of an arrow, which it's almost never going to hit left. Because it's really hard to have too stiff of an arrow.
Yep.
Right?
But what if it does end up hitting a combination of right and low?
Right.
I've seen that a lot.
So low, if you're talking low, which also low can be weak too.
Really?
So right is weak and low is weak with a release and a standard arrow rest without tension on it.
That makes sense.
So they'll hit right and low is usually weak. So if you're striking right and low commonly, it's an easy way to test that. Back your bow down 5 or 6 pounds. Does the low right go away? It's probably spine.
That's a really cool suggestion.
Doesn't cost anything. It's an easy check.
Or you could pull your fletchings off and nick like a half inch off your arrow if you didn't want to
Yeah. You could, but that costs something.
Yeah.
Right. Adjusting a limb bolt doesn't cost anything. Just screw it right back on. You cut a half inch off your arrow. That arrow's now half inch shorter. Can't fix that if you decide that wasn't what it was. Because you could be getting a contact somewhere. Something could be hitting somewhere that's making it kick that way. Whereas if you just shoot a lighter weight, you'll see it change.
Let's say you shoot at 60 yards. You shoot your broadhead first. Left and right's money, but it's about 3-4 inches low, and your field point's right in the bullseye. That's happened to me a lot. Do you bump the rest up ever so slightly?
I would immediately go back and check my timing.
Okay.
I would immediately go back and check my timing. And then if I'm sure my timing's good, and I would check it in a draw board that has an offset handle that mimics the actual drop distance between your hand and where the arrow leaves. So that arrow should be coming back straight with the hand position low. Where some of the draw boards out there draw in a straight line.
How's my draw board on my last chance? That does it, right?
Nope.
Oh.
You'll be a half a twist out.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you look at the draw board I have in my shop, the handle is offset, and you actually have to move the draw board for left or right. And it's offset by the distance in which your hand would sit on the string. Because I learned that like 10, 12 years ago. You'd put it back in a last chance draw board, and you'd deliberately set it a half a twist out.
I knew I'd learn something.
Because when you pull it back in your hands, all of a sudden, okay, it feels out. But I just checked it. It's not. Well, yeah, it is. It absolutely is. So, and then a lot of the really hard aggressive cams, it's hard to get them perfectly timed. The new Bowtech target system actually has a adjustment. You can readjust where the peg is. I'm trying to remember. I think Black Eagle's actually making that one that McCarthy is talking about, the timing one that you mentioned the other day.
Oh yeah, the Dan McCarthy timing little doodads.
Yeah, it's a little thing you put in your cable. You could just put some string loop material in there if you wanted something to change the.
These are like
the
little
length.
hourglass. Yeah. I think it's pretty smart. Honestly, I'm probably gonna mess with those down the road.
Yeah. Well, if you look at
kind of slows down.
I've seen guys in the target world with a piece of loop material in their string, and they're trying to lengthen it a small or shorten it an entirely small amount, enough that you can't put a full twist in the string.
I would say, guys watching, if you're really trying to get into archery, I think this is undeniable. I could be wrong. Tell me your thoughts, but I just think if you really want to get better at archery, don't follow the bow hunters. Follow the target guys. They're the nerds that have
follow
money's on the line.
Follow Tim Gillingham. Follow Paige Pierce. She puts out so much good information, like incredibly good information. Follow Dan McCarthy. When I was talking to you about the pushing on the end of the arrow to figure out where your spine is.
Yeah.
I figured that out, and then 2 days later, Brian sent me a video of Dan McCarthy talking about it.
Interesting.
Like, shit.
Yeah.
But nobody still makes a tool. So I'm going to work on that. But the
so you recheck your time.
Yep.
If you're still in time and your broadhead is planing, hitting a little low.
Then you move. Ideally, you actually move your loop because it makes a bigger change, but you can move your arrow rest too.
I like the idea of not moving the rest at all. So let's stick with that.
Okay. So if you're hitting low, you'd move your loop down. Make it hit higher.
And that was
which is weird because if you think about the decisions you make with your arrow rest that seem like the opposite of what it should do with your left to right, but your up and down still holds true. If you're hitting low, you move your loop down. If you're hitting high, you move your loop up.
Nick Fisher was the first one to like put on a D loop on one of my bows and not like cinch it down.
Yeah, so you can move it.
He moved that thing a ton. And I was like, I didn't know that. I was that day old when I learned that. So that makes a lot of sense, Josh. I mean, yeah, ideally, especially with like the Q80 integrates with Matthews, which I'm trying one right now, by the way, and I like it a lot.
You will until the cord stretches on you when you're hunting.
We'll see. I hope that doesn't happen. But 1316's off the rise. The thing's built for it, and I don't want to move it. And it sounds like
there's all kinds of ways to not move your rest.
Some workarounds. Let's say you did need to move it. Would you move it a click or two up?
If you're moving the arrow rest in that scenario and your arrow's hitting low, your broadhead's hitting low, your field point, you would move the arrow rest up.
Now,
so the opposite of what the loop would be.
Dan Evans makes a sight tape. I'm talking about him personally, where like inevitably a fixed broadhead will eventually plane, right? There's just no like.
So will a mechanical.
And a mechanical eventually. So he has basically figured out a way for himself to use a different sight tape for things that are going to kill animals instead of field points.
Sure.
And it's just
one on each side.
It's so slightly different, but it's just a little more stretched out.
It won't be different. That's a good practice. It won't be different till like 80 or 90 yards, and then it'll get different.
Okay.
Because of drag. Because there's more drag surface on a broadhead than there is on a field point.
So when you killed that antelope
the other practice,
2 years ago?
The other practice, that was last year.
Can I bring this up?
The other practice is iron wheels field points. They create more drag.
Which is, I don't have any right here. I don't.
Yeah, they're bulbed, so they create more drag. They're much more. You're more likely to lose them in a target. They're a little bit harder to get out of a target because they hang up on the target. But that's the purpose of it.
I'm sold on them.
Is to create drag.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're trying to sight in a field point and a broadhead and leave them together, that's a better bet.
That should be your North Star if you're into bow hunting. Dude, I'm learning some stuff from you today. This is cool. Okay, the antelope. Do you want to talk about the antelope, or like I can kind of talk about?
Can we just say it was a ways away?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. Josh shot an antelope in Idaho. It's the furthest shot I've heard of anyone shooting an antelope. I'll just say that. Is that fair and safe?
Sure.
Maybe I don't know a lot of people, so maybe that number.
Maybe you haven't heard a lot.
Okay. Anyways, for a shot that far, with an expandable.
Yeah, it was an expandable.
Still had to account for the planing, right?
Yeah. Well, I was sighted in with the broadheads.
Yeah.
I wasn't sighted in with field points. I stopped shooting field points 3 weeks prior.
And then you just kind of
And I rebuilt my tape for the broadheads only. And I went over to my cousin's house 3 days a week, 4 days a week, because one, there's no customers out there, so I don't get stopped and ask questions and whatnot while I'm trying to shoot my own stuff. And two, I can shoot out to 150 and we drive a UTV and go pull the arrows and come back. And I'm standing in a shop
Yeah.
So if it's rainy, windy,
No
whatever,
wind. Yeah.
I can still practice and get the reps in. Now, granted, it's going to react down there, and it's amazing how little wind moves a lot at like 150.
So the wind, I'll show you this video.
How do you put a baby astronaut to sleep? You rock it.
Okay, so I hit perfect right behind the shoulder. I was not aiming there. You had about a 14-mile-an-hour wind that day, and that was 120 yards. Do you know where? Yeah, I was aiming at the end of the vitals.
Yeah.
And you'll see my bow is like the framing of that. I got lucky. I had it perfectly framed. If you look, you'll see my bow is pointed at the middle of the moose body.
Yeah.
And then the arrow goes out of frame. And when the arrow comes back in the frame, it's way over and it's dropping in.
Yep.
So at 150, even in...
Oh, it's stupid.
Like when I shot that 300-yard shot with Tim, all that was based on wind. It was not that hard.
No,
people think I'm not that good at archery.
It's easy. You find something to point at, you shoot it, and you'll move the target where the arrow landed.
And then you just watch the wind.
Yeah,
and I had a
watch the wind.
flagpole,
Yeah.
and I just had to wait for it to die down. Now, the reason I'm talking about all this, guys, and this is what I want you to get takeaways is, do you think, Josh, it would be more... If guys who love expandables, and I've killed stuff with expandables, you love expandables. If you guys took the route that we're talking about of using fixed broadheads for this end of foreplay process, get it all perfect using a fixed broadhead. And then if you want to use expandable, just put it on. Wouldn't that be better than just really tuning?
You're still tuning to a greater scale, but now you're buying another set of broadheads just for a tuning purpose. At that point, you probably ought to just use a shaft because they're going to do the same thing.
Okay.
So you can totally do it that scenario. One thing we did miss over when we're talking about premium setups and trying to get this thing dialed. The difference between each arrow is a lot of variant, and you can get the weight the same on each arrow, but they still kind of deflect different. And I figured out ways to be able to tell which way they're going to deflect. However, that will change as soon as you fletch it. So for those of you standing out there, knock tuning shafts, because this is the optimum performance and perfect setup, etc. That doesn't work as soon as you fletch it. It's different. So if you're going to knock tune, you should be knock tuning a fletched arrow, not a shaft, because they do look different arrow to arrow. You can do the exact same thing. To think that the fletching is correcting the arrow at 7 feet is foolish. It hasn't even had a chance to do anything.
That would make sense.
So, and that's actually a lot of the like high level guys that are shooting 4-fletch. That's more of the reason why they're doing it, because it's easier to reorientate the arrow and not refletch the arrow, because there's more orientation points. You can pick which which fletch is supposed to point the right direction because you have more of them. So as you're tuning it and trying to find that optimum point where it actually does shoot exactly the same, mind you, they don't have to look like a perfect hole at first. They just need to look like the same hole. So they're flexing the same each time. After that's fletched, a 4-fletch gives you more points of contact.
Okay, I got a dozen pro comps on the way. You heard me ordering the iron wheel components. So I'm going to cut those arrows. If I fletch them first and glue and hot melt, are you saying to shoot through paper?
Shoot each one of them through paper.
How
and
far?
Like 7 to 10 feet, just right out of the bow. You don't have to be far away from it at all.
Are you talking 120 degree rotation, 90 degree, 1/8, 1/4?
So I still really like 3 fletches because I don't think they move as much in the wind.
I'm going to 3-fletch. I'm going to use a hybrid HP.
Here's the negative.
Okay.
You're going to have to refletch a bunch of them. So you fletch them, you turn it to where you turn it to where the tear looks exactly the same.
Okay.
And then fletch them all the same color. Right.
Got it.
So if you end up 120, you're just using that one as your cock feather instead of the other one. You don't have to refletch them. If you end up 60 degrees in between the two to where they're orientated, guess what? You're refletching that arrow with the fletches pointed the other way.
So you gotta say that really slow for me. So because
Okay.
I just have this idea of the cock vane always being up for my setups. Okay?
Which is fine.
So if I rotate the knock on my 3 fletches that are all the same color, doesn't matter, and I get a perfect bullet hole consistently, I'm going to take a silver Sharpie and mark where
up is.
Where up is.
Up is. And if one of the fletches doesn't line up to be your cock feather that's up, you need to refletch that arrow to where they do.
And I can cock vane that one.
Yes, but by putting the weight on the back of the arrow like that and the way you twist them and the way they orientate,
I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And here's why that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
I use the Arizona Easy Mini Max to the left. It takes me 1 second to redo that. Now, speaking of these, and we're going to probably have to end this podcast, but the Goat Tough Fletcher, have you seen it?
I have not yet.
Watch the YouTube video drop today.
Mm-hmm.
I gave that guy airtime on that video because I'm like, this is insanely good.
Okay.
If you're into 2-degree offsets, not the crazies that we do, this would be a really good option. But you can't do all your vanes at once.
Sure.
You have to, but just watch that. Text me when you see it. Whenever that happens, let me know your thoughts.
Sure.
You probably, I can predict what you'll say. You'll be like, either you'll say, so-and-so made that, a version of that 17 years ago. It was called this. Or you'll be like, oh, I already thought of that.
What did you see it
making
on?
that.
What did you see it on?
I'm saying what you're going to say.
No, I understand that. But what did you see it on?
I've never seen it in my life. I saw it in real life. The guy brought it to camp.
Oh, he had it with him?
Yeah. And we fletched a few arrows right there, then and there.
Huh.
And it was really impressive, Josh.
So, but you recorded it on your video?
Yeah, it's on the YouTube video. Okay. I gave it airtime.
Why don't you pull it up and I'll look at it?
Okay.
And then you can have my exact opinion.
And then I want to finish.
Yeah.
with if you want to talk about any more fletching devices.
Sure.
Guys, he knows what I'm talking about.
I know what he's talking about.
Okay.
Not a bad idea.
So you have options.
Yeah.
Offset.
Yep.
I like that you're pushing down.
So you're applying pressure and holding it. That's a good idea. I mean, at first thought, it actually looks like an Arizona plastic one that they made.
Okay.
But it's different. Like the thing that holds the vane isn't actually a clamp. It just sets in it and you push down on it. That's not a bad idea.
And then he served the little thing so there was no slop on the knock, you know? Mm-hmm. But that guy's name's Craig. He's a huge fan of yours. He calls you out a couple times, like for fun in the video.
Sure.
He was bummed you weren't there. But he's a great guy. You would have loved him.
Yeah.
Full nerd. Did you get the gist?
Yeah, no.
The little spindle is a 4 or a 3?
Yeah, I hadn't seen that before. I'll bring him in.
And the prices are really fair, like $45 retail.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a pretty good option for people.
Sure.
So my dad was like, I'm buying one.
Yeah, that looks like a good tool. I mean, it's along the same premise of what I'm trying to make, because I am making a fletching jig. It's not done yet, but I wanted to make it so simple you can't fuck it up. Yeah. And you can adjust it, but there's different pieces for changing how much it is. But there's not like this moving it back and forth to get it where you like it. There's pre-built things.
I like that.
And you are doing all of them at the same time, not one at a time.
Yeah.
In what I'm making. And as far as the knock fitting tight in the receiver, there's actually inserts for the size of arrow.
What do you know?
Thinking of a thing or two.
When is it going to be done, dude?
Ask Mark.
Beauvais.
He's been dicking with it for like 2.5 months.
Then maybe
the issue is that we're making it perfect. The issue we're having is getting enough pressure on the vane that you don't have to hold it and it holds itself.
That would be nice, man.
That's the issue. That's where we're at. And
it's
really close. Arrow. It's really close, if you had 2 of them, it's sitting
make
there
it affordable so that you can buy 3 or 4 at a time, or make a bundle.
We're targeting 100 because it's mostly metal. It's not plastic.
So give me a bundle price if I buy 3 or whatever. I love having multiple jigs when I'm doing a dozen.
Yeah, well, the premise of the time it takes to load it, the time it takes to set it up, and the time it takes to glue it, you only need 2, because that's dry by the time you've finished doing the other one. And there will be a 3 fletch or 4 fletch options.
How much patents does Bitzenberg have?
Bitzenberger's like 70 years old. I really doubt they have a valid patent. An OMP made one that looks just like it. It just hasn't come out yet.
I was going to say, I'm going to make one not out of pot metal that actually, I'll shave it all down the way it's supposed to be proper. Because
I would take a look at OMPs before you waste your money just to make sure. But it looks a lot like it. I still don't have them. I have 100 of left, right, and straight of each on order.
Yeah.
Still haven't seen one yet. Wow. They're saying July. And I'm like, guys, you just missed the whole hunting window. Yeah, that's terrible.
Stupid.
What did you show this thing in January for if you're not going to put it out till July?
That's really surprising.
Yeah, normally most manufacturers are smart enough to know better.
Are we going to ATA next year or not?
Oh, God. Well, is ATA even be there next year? Like they've had 2 or 3 years in a row where it was down a lot.
I haven't been.
Down a lot. But I almost got talked into it this year, so I think it's probably too far. I have to do it if it's still there.
I might go this year. Year. I haven't been in a few. Yeah. And I haven't missed it. But I do think it might be smart.
I'll probably
especially for what you're doing, just to to get hands on. Guys, we got to go. Josh got other things to do. Josh's channel, I always get this wrong. I'm going to link it right there.
Yeah.
And I'm also going to put a link right there to sub his channel. I'm going to put a link right here to sub my channel. If you are here and lurking and not subscribing, please, all you got to do is subscribe. It's no sweat off your eyebrows. Just do it. We need them. It helps make more content.
It's really important, guys. Subscribe, please.
Leave a bad comment or two.
Yeah, leave me a shitty comment. I love them.
Tell Josh to quit wearing a mohawk. He's 44 years old. Or
you would do it if you could, and you know it.
Oh, nice. Parting advice, Josh, for guys who watched this far and found it interesting. Parting advice, life advice, inspirational, motivational, philosophical.
Oh, man, killing me. Make sure your stuff's perfect. Don't spend the extra money on gear if your gear that you have hasn't been set perfectly to begin with. Learn how to work on your own stuff because it's only going to make you better. Don't be afraid of it. And I am trying to put out as much different how-to stuff so you're not afraid to do it. You need to work on your own stuff. It doesn't mean you're not going to go into the shop and ask for help. You've learned how to work on your own stuff. You're still constantly ask for help.
It's a process.
Yeah, it's a process. And I still see as much. I mean, it's not that different, right? Eventually, maybe you get to the point that you don't need me, but you've probably put 30 people out there that still do because you were learning to do it yourself. And that's the point that a shop needs to take into account. Having somebody work on their own stuff is going to get more people in the sport. And at the end of the day, we need more people in the sport. That's the only way it's going to survive in the hunting end of things. If we don't have more people hunting when they vote on stuff, there's not enough voices voting our way. We need more involvement. That's being more confident in what you're doing, i.e. working on your own stuff. Nothing more valuable than working on your own stuff, in my opinion.
My parting advice is from the last podcast Josh did with me, which was been over a year ago, and that is call your dad. If he's still alive, call him today. Tell him you love him no matter what. I'm going to do that right now. Call my dad. Haven't talked to him all week. Let him know Josh lost his father. And watch that podcast. We'll link at the very end here. That's a really cool, emotional podcast. I'm glad we did it on video mode. So check that out. Get to know Josh. Subscribe to channels. Separations and the preparation. We'll catch you on the next one.